So I believe Omnicom has been a first mover. You're rolling out Omni 3 now, which has a lot of integrations, which we'll cover in a separate story. In addition to that, you've begun integrating more closely with your sister agency, sister unit, Sparks and Honey, which of course developed the Q AI platform, which does a lot of cultural analysis, scraping the world's information and giving it meaning. So based on that introduction, I'm going to call Omnicom a first mover. I think Jonathan Wren called it that in his last analyst call as well. Yes, I know everybody's playing catch up and all in on AI now. But my leading question for Jonathan, and then to the extent you can, Jay, comment on what has been the greatest learning curve? Don't spill any secret sauce, but tell us what you've really learned from being the first movers and early on in this process. What would you do differently if you did it all over again?
Oh, uh, well, I think first mover advantages are really about making mistakes and correcting them as quickly as possible. And what we're finding with AI is here we have a set of platforms. It's not just OpenAI, but it's Google, it's Adobe, it's Amazon, and it's a balance between the cloud systems and the large language models and reinforcement learning and how those things work together. And it doesn't always work. And so we're making a lot of mistakes, but we're correcting really quickly and moving on very, very fast. So that's how we do it.
Um, well, from the first versions you showed me, they were all great in terms of what they could enable people to do. I
Yeah,
think the discussion's been how do you integrate people and onboard them into doing it? What has
sure.
been a curve like that? And can you talk a little bit about like culturally, like what departments embrace it first, what generation types, and what you've learned from that, and to the extent possible, what other agencies and clients could learn from that?
Well, we're trying to put AI on everybody's desktop throughout Omnicom. And of course, the use cases are radically different from a media planner, media buyer versus, say, a creative director or an account person. But what we're really doing is using sort of a human machine combination and enabling the people in the field to have superpowers. And some people accept that. Some people are rushing towards it. Some people are rejecting it. And so we are trying to make it simple. We're trying to make it useful and have utility, and ultimately drive value for clients.
Jay, to the extent you've been covering how Omnicom and other agencies and organizations have been adopting it, what do you think has been the curve in terms of human adoption, onboarding, getting people integrated, and what are the impediments?
I think initially, Joe, the resistance was mostly on the content and creative side, as the technology somewhat conflicted with the the legacy process, if you will, of conceiving and developing and producing ideas. I think early on there was a great deal of embrace on the media side, in early the early versions of whether it be Omni or some of the other holding companies technology, partly because the world of media is just more data literate and conversant, and data has always played a role in the planning and buying of media and the accountability of being stewards of large media budgets. So the embrace happened there early on, and the creative resistance maintained, I think, up until about a year ago when Chat GPT was released into the marketplace at the end of November of 2022. Now, some of the visualization AI technologies were generative visualization technologies were getting popular prior to that, and getting some use, but really that was the floodgates opening up.
That's a great summation. It has been almost a year since ChatGPT, and I believe that really jump-started not just a lot of people in the industry, but a lot of consumers to get involved. And just yesterday on Monday, Google announced it was suing a couple of scammers because the adoption of their Bard program and other AI assistants has been so fast. People are now starting to use it as a vector to distribute malware. Go figure.
Mhm.
What are the concerns you have, both of you right now, in terms of getting people to feel comfortable using the technology? Because it is a little bit like a black box to a lot of people, and it is so powerful. How do you overcome that human resistance?
I think at Omnicom, we focus quite a bit on safety, which in the parlance of AI is alignment, really figuring out things like copyright. Um, Obviously, if you've ever played with this, you probably noticed that it can make things up. It can make things up both in terms of it could make up your bio, which may not be factually accurate, but it also might make up some things with images. And so there's always a human in the loop, and training people to look for those things, to understand those things. Also communicating to clients, hey, this is not a perfect technology. This is not the complete panacea. It will get better, but these are very early days still. And so once again, we're putting all that on the desktop for folks and then training them to use it, and likewise collaborating with clients to use it appropriately for them really to draw sketches, not to draw final outputs.
So, yeah, I think from the start, you've been very focused on security. I think today you're just announcing a new deal with Getty to be the first agency to license their AI-based imagery, which is,
Yes.
a big issue, obviously, for AI is copyright infringement and licensing.
Mhm.
In Omni 3, when you walk me through it, one of the things I was impressed with is how you can guardrail your client's intellectual property, make sure it's not getting scraped into some of these systems. So there's a lot to think about here. Um,
Yes.
Jay, in your experience, is this the right way, or should we be breaking things fast and fixing them? Or, I mean, is this the right protocol from what you're seeing?
Definitely, it's the correct protocol to be thinking about how employees adopt the technology, to also be considering their emotional safety, as this, certainly touches into the world of automation, and automation translates into task replacement, which eventually accumulates to job replacement. Our uh, early forecasts were as high as 25% because they focused primarily on machine learning and automation. As generative AI has become more part of the mix, we can see the benefit and the benefit to the employee, that is, the augmentation, the improvement of skills. And when we model for that, the task replacement drops to 7.5%, which is about a third of the average attrition rate of any given agency. So yeah, the playbook of training and rolling out to all employees, and helping them understand not only the emotional safety but the brand safety portion of it, I think is a great first step in the widespread adoption of AI into marketing.
Yeah, I think the number one human impediment is always going to be job security. But the truth is that Madison Avenue has been going through digital transformation for a long time now. When I started in the 80s, there were thousands of people inside each agency buying local media and estimating things. That doesn't exist anymore. It's all digital interface now. So that's a natural progression. But what is it about AI and the acceleration of this technology, Jonathan, that you're focusing on to get people comfortable not losing their jobs, but maybe transforming their jobs into something more interesting and exciting?
I think it's really about augmenting their jobs. If you can have an ideation platform that you can uh, innovate and be creative upon, I think it allows you to test out different ideas, different looks, different feels, different copy. You can do different optimization in media. All of those things require a human in the loop still. They can just do their jobs better. And that's how we're looking at building these tools. There's a person there that is using these tools to do their job more efficiently, um, with better quality. And I think that ends up being beneficial to both the agency, but most of all to the clients.
Well, we certainly saw a number of examples at Cannes this year with people like Jeff going up there and saying how ChatGPT helped them write this, award-winning creative headline and concept. Um, but the thing is, it's not inherent in a lot of people's workflow right now. So we see leading creatives playing with it. I assume leading strategists and media people as well. Um, is there like training that you do to help them, or is it just plug and play, getting involved with the assistants and letting them train you?
Yeah, there's absolutely training, and uh, there's both in-person training, but also distance learning. So training modules as well as making the interfaces very, very simple. So we have one thing inside of Omni called Omni Assist, which essentially guides you through all of the training. So you can ask it questions and it will come back with a custom response, and it will lead you to tutorials or to examples of work, case studies. Yeah, there's a huge amount of training that sits behind it. I mean, ultimately, we are still a people business. What we're doing is giving them superpowers through these special tools we're building.
So you've been a first mover in building those tools and giving your team special superpowers. Do you worry, like, as the technology evolves, we get to a point of regression to the mean where everybody has that same infinite capability, and then I assume, comes down to human adaptation of the technology. But in terms of a technological advantage, do you think we'll get to the point of parity?
Jay, do you want to take this one? Do you want me to do it?
Sure. I think we're going to quickly find some issues around differentiation with a lot of similar technology, whether inside Omnicom or in other holding companies. But I think that will quickly resolve itself with exclusive partnerships to data sets and assets. It could be one version of it. The development of proprietary models, marketing engines inside the various holding company inside the various holding companies, and then of course the people, the people involved will strive for creating the nuance and the difference, and ultimately it'll really come down to the operators. It'll come down to the creators, and that will be their role in working with this technology, is to make the outputs different and unique to the brand and bespoke to the brand.
Yeah, I think we can already see a regression towards the mean, to use your language, Joe, which is when you see an image created with a diffusion model, they look very, very similar. Now, over time, it's our job to get them to diverge, but I think you can see, if you give everybody the same tools, that the rising tide will lift all boats. But in the meantime, at Omnicom, we're looking at how to use these things in ways that create completely varied outputs that you can't that are augmented by machines, but connect all of the components of the marketing funnel together in ways that people never even dreamed of, and ultimately drive outcomes for clients. I mean, that's what we're really getting at here.
On that note, and to Jay's point about having proprietary, exclusive and content and data access, I think you're pretty excited about a deal Omnicom recently announced. You haven't completed it yet, but to acquire the e-commerce assets of Essential, the Flywheel division, which not just a state-of-the-art e-commerce platform, it sits on a lot of data too. To the extent you can you talk about how that accelerates your opportunity here on those business outcomes?
Yeah, we haven't closed the deal yet, so I'm going to kind of stay high level. But I think that sales and marketing have been two divisions that sit next to each other, but they're not necessarily always connected. But I think digital does connect them. And Flywheel are specialists at retail media and driving outcomes. What Omnicom historically has been is sort of upper mid funnel marketing, so brand, CRM. But now we have the connective tissue to bring it all the way to the transaction. And that for us is a really exciting thing, because after all, if clients could sell their products without any marketing, my guess is they would forego the expense, but that's not how the real world works. What we're going to do is connect awareness, consideration, purchase, and post-purchase fully together using the flywheel acquisition.
So maybe for Jay, if you can talk about how this type of data integration across the entire funnel will it drive more of a direction of commerce and performance and away from the historic brand building, the big idea stuff? Or do you think that will also reach a tipping point where people will eventually use these tools to move back to the brand?
I don't think it's, these are mutually exclusive, performance and brand. Increasingly, they're kind of colliding. And what used to be single dimension briefs or campaigns centered around a brand objective versus a conversion or a performance objective, we now see really multi-dimensional briefs that include both brand objectives and performance objectives. And so whether we're talking about Profitero inside Publicis, or soon to be Flywheel Digital inside Omnicom, it's just facilitating that collision of precision marketing and persuasion marketing in a more multi-dimensional campaign. We also see that at the independent digital media agencies that were historically performance agencies have figured out this recipe and have started to move their propositions, if you will, up the funnel, while simultaneously addressing the bottom of the funnel. So it's a long-standing trend, I think, across the entire industry. But Flywheel certainly moves Omnicom in that direction significantly.
Okay. Oh, to your earlier point, Jonathan, about the regression to the mean and the fact that this technology is giving parity, I think you were alluding also to, I sat through a Sparks and Honey session last week on planning for AI next year, and they were showing some interfaces, some new products that Amazon just dropped that basically enable anybody, any mom and pop, any overnight direct-to-consumer brand created in China to compete with the same quality, look, and presentation as any other e-commerce player on Amazon overnight. Does that worry? Does that keep you up at night?
Are you talking about the generative fill things that they released where that you can replace backgrounds? I think it's early days still. I mean, the democratization of the tool set, I mean, we're not the only ones that have this, as Amazon has shown. I think it up levels the baseline. However, all the things that are upstream of that, all of the awareness, the consideration driving towards purchase, I mean, what they're doing is changing the backgrounds. So that's a component of it. But yeah, I think these tools are very, very interesting. They're not just interesting for companies like Omnicom, they're interesting for for everybody. And so we're trying to use them in a way that augments our business and our clients.
All right. Well, I think I'd like to close with just an impossible question. Maybe I should be asking Omni Assist this question, but I mean, what do you envision Omni 4 will be like, or the next generations of interface design? Obviously, we're getting these in the hands of people with Assist, with AI, but what's the next big disruptor in terms of integration of artificial intelligence in the whole workflow?
Oh gosh, Joe. I mean, can I roll out Omni 3 first? I mean, Omni 4 is, I think what we're going to see is just an increasing level of intelligence. Just these tools will get smarter and smarter and smarter, and they're going to push the people. But inversely, the people are pushing the tools as well. And one of our big philosophies is, to be honest, I don't know. We did a first deal with Google. We did a first deal with OpenAI through Microsoft. We did Adobe. We did Amazon. We've done Getty. what happens when we put these tools along with Q and Omni and everything, surface these on the desktops of some of the most brilliant people, the brilliant minds in the world? I don't know, but I'm pretty excited to see it and find out. Reincorporate that back into the tool chain that we're building. And I think that's going to be what Omni 4 is, just a much more intelligent human machine interface.
Okay, well, on that note, I would just ask, is there anything I didn't ask that you think if we were doing role reversal here that you'd want to ask yourself?
I think we're in a very interesting self-regulatory environment right now, in which the slowness, if you will, or the deliberateness of regulatory authorities in the U.S. government and the EU and other governments have created an environment where the holding companies and brands and agencies in general have to regulate and hold themselves to pretty high standards for AI responsibility and brand safety, and that makes for an interesting creative environment and creative freedom for the next 24 months, 12, 18 months, depending upon the timing, and puts a lot of responsibility on marketers to establish the rules, the do's and the don'ts, and that's an important responsibility to shoulder.
That's a great closure, Jay. I think when we spoke previously, we talked a little bit about that self-regulatory aspect, and I think the Association of National Advertisers early on came up with a requirement that there needed to be prior consent anytime an agency utilizes AI. That does not seem that practical for day in and day out work. We just had President Biden's executive order. It seems to be a lot of well-intentioned but platitudinal stuff. You have the platforms like Meta announcing, requirements to disclose AI generations in advertising, at least for politics now. Is this all lip service? And in the end, how will we reach that equalized point of self-regulation versus something really negative happening and regulation?
I don't perceive it as lip service. I perceive it as deliberate attempts, to move in the direction that things need to go. The ANA update to its media planning or media buying template, MSA, is an example of their organization trying to get members and marketers to ask the right questions about AI, but let alone to recognize that AI has been optimizing their media for years, and but to become more cognizant of that and aware of what tools and technologies they're benefiting from. The executive order from the White House does stipulate some very long timelines, first deliverables around content authenticity and watermarking at 240 days out from the executive order, and then the set of guidance at another 120 days after that, which is a full year, and so it's moving in the right direction, but it's moving at the speed at which regulatory authorities move, and governmental organizations move, and it ideally could move faster, but it won't, and again, it just leaves the industry in a position to take up the slack, and to do it appropriately, or if it's taken advantage of, there'll be actions on the other side of that as a result of it, and hopefully lessons have been learned in the technology world in order to proactively plan and take consumer privacy and responsible uses of technology into consideration.
Okay. Well, I hope we can reconvene at some point when these next iterations start to roll out, and I hope it's not being done with a Chat J or Jonathan Assist interface, but who knows what'll happen. So thank you for